Shiny Pokemon, the treasure of any Pokemon playthrough. These rare Pokemon give an extra oomph to all of our favorites throughout the franchise, but did you know there's hidden lore to many of these rare critters? And how every single shiny was actually hand-picked? Such as Hydriegon being partially inspired by Yamato no Orochi, who has the same coloring as its shiny. Magcargo's original shiny being a reference to its 18,000 degree body temperature. The shiny legendary dogs raikou, entei, and suicune potentially being from an alternate timeline. Tapu Koko's shiny is from a destroyed version of Alola, and many, many more. So after digging through the entire Pokedex and studying every Pokemon shiny form, I can now bring to you the origins of every shiny Pokemon. Hi there, I'm Curlic, and today we will have this organized in order of the entire Pokedex, explaining, exactly as I stated, the lore of every shiny Pokemon. Some are simple, being adaptations to help them camouflage better, while others are designed in reference to any real-life inspirations that they may have. And since this is a massive amount of info, I am breaking this up into parts. But what exactly are shiny Pokemon, and how did they survive in the world in the first place? They were originally called Rare in the debug menu from Pokemon Gold and Silver, Color Pokemon in Pokemon Stadium 2, and also referred to as Alt Color in the Generation 3 Easy Chat system. The Shining Pokemon from the trading card game were also introduced before the word shiny was officially used in the Pokemon games. Some early guidebooks also referred to them as colored Pokemon or specially colored Pokemon. The term shiny Pokemon was first created by fans based on the sparkling sound effect and animation at the start of an encounter with one in the games. Eventually, this term fell into official usage in Generation 4, used on promotional material promoting shiny event Pokemon. Little is known about how shiny colorations are chosen. While it is often rumored that early shiny colorations were determined algorithmically, all Pokemon's shiny colorations are individually defined in the game data, and Pokemon with similar palettes have distinct shiny colorations even in Generation 2. James Turner, who has worked as a Pokemon designer since Generation 5, stated the first time he selected shiny colorations was in Generation 7, when he selected the shiny colorations of the Ultra Beasts he designed. Furthermore, there seems to be no real evidence whatsoever showing that created shiny Pokemon was an automatic process. In fact, Pokemon are all hand-picked adjusted colorations. Proof of this can be seen in the Pokemon game's debug menu, where an adjustable slider exists and allows you to pick a primary color to change the color of the Pokemon with. This is best seen with Bulbasaur, in which we see that one color is adjusted in its hues, while the other is not changed in the slightest. But I won't spend an excessive amount of time on proving that. This is just to show that all Pokemon were deliberately picked to be their designated colors, for better or for worse. Now, there may have been some level of a process in which, oh, if it's blue, make it pink, move on with your life. Or, alternatively, if that did happen, maybe they didn't like it and then they hand adjusted it from there. Either way, every single shiny was approved. Shiny Pokemon also appear in different rates in different universes, and I'm not just talking about different playthroughs of games. Whether we look at different universes within the Ultra Wormholes or legendary Pokemon in the max layers of Galar, we find that there are more shinies being found. As a side, some people do believe that the max layer Pokemon come from Ultra Space, if not other universes altogether at the least. Even Pokemon Go is included in this, as it is a technically canonical extended universe in which shiny Pokemon are more common. But enough about the mechanics and the games and how all that works. What about shiny Pokemon and their real life equivalent? How are these things surviving in the wild? You might be familiar with albino animals, and if not, allow me to quote from iowadnr.gov. Albinism is a result of cells that can't produce melanin, the pigment needed to color skin, scales, eye, and hair. This genetic condition gets passed to offspring when both parents carry the recessive gene. When albinism is present, the animal can appear white or pink. This is important for our future. An animal can be completely albino or pure albino, or have leucism. Pure albino animals will have pink eyes, nails, skin, and or scales. The pink coloration comes from blood vessels showing through the skin. Animals with leucism may have mostly typical but lighter coloration patterns. Aside from appearance, these animals often have problems related to albinism, such as issues with eyesight, Melanin helps eye development, so without it, irises, retinas, eye muscles, and optic nerves may not form properly. This can cause issues with focusing, depth perception, and tracking in the albino critter. Since melanin helps with protecting skin from sunlight, lacking the pigment means a higher risk of developing melanoma. This causes trouble for a sun-basking species, often leading to death for the albino animal. Hit that Taco Bell bong, please. Birds with albinism will also find a difficult time in regards to getting a mate. Because if you're supposed to be a male bird with brightly colored feathers showing off your stuff, peacocking if you would, well, you don't have that. You have white or completely black feathers, and that's not what they're looking for. While a bright white animal may make you stop and stare, what about an all-black variation? This coloration, called melanism, is due to an increase of melanin in an animal's fur or skin. This is also a hereditary condition that's been found in various species, including reptiles, amphibians, and mammals. As for survival, a bright white animal in a green and brown environment can really stand out. This may cause the critter to be spotted more easily by predators due to the disruption of cryptic coloration. Cryptic coloration is the coloring or markings animals have to blend into their environment. Baby deer actually have their white spots, an example of cryptic coloration, to blend in with the sunspots shining through the sky, or rather the foliage above, into the forest floor. However, there may have been instances of albino animals not being recognized as prey due to their strange coloring. Some amphibians have a different color battle. There have been instances of frogs appearing blue. This is the result of genes that should have caused the frog to be green or brown mutating. The mutation causes different wavelengths of light to be filtered out, causing a blue-looking bullfrog. And this should all allow you to understand what struggles every Pokemon may go through with their shiny coloration, and all this extra information as to why some shinies might be lighter in color, a little bit darker in color. It's actually entirely feasible in regards to real life. But that last bit of information that I just shared with you about the bullfrog allows me to rope in our first lore about shiny Pokemon because of this condition, but in the opposite way. As we begin with Generation 1, the entirety of the Bulbasaur line originally appears blue, but when they are shiny, they get that green coloration. Again, very opposite to what happens in real life bullfrogs. In addition, part of the inspiration from this line comes from lilies or onions, the former of which we might find typically associate a reddish or orange color with, which is the same colors that we see in their shiny forms or their regular forms for their growing bulbs or their flower. For Charmander and Charmeleon, they lose saturation, which likely does reference what they are based on, being salamanders. Now, when it comes to Charizard, the black coloration that it gets is likely because of the other salamanders simply having exactly that, a natural black coloration. Alternatively, it could also be related to melanism, as we've spoken about before, or even reference the burning of charcoal. When we look at its mega forms, its Y form is the same, but its X form gains a teal coloration. Traditional depictions of Eastern dragons may have a similar blue color. As we turn to the Squirtle line, its shiny is likely a reference to the Kemp's Ridley sea turtle, which has hatchlings that are almost entirely a dark purple on both sides, but mature adults have a yellow-green or white plastron and a gray-green carapace. And of course, we find that same green shell throughout the entire line, but as Squirtle evolves, we get the purple coloration added to it through its maturity, being an opposite to what happens with the Kemp's Sid turtle. Caterpie, being based on the Spicebush Swallowtail caterpillar, has its green and its yellow shiny coloration directly inspired by the real-life creature. What's also fun as a small tangent is that it looks like this because it is also able to mimic the shape and patterning of a snake from the front, allowing it to have some level of protection from birds or other creatures that might try to eat it, as it is a deterrent. Caterpie assumedly having similar reasoning for that. Their cocoons are similar in that yellow-orange color of Metapod Shiny, which does look a little bit like an autumn leaf. Honestly, these colors can be huge as accidental camouflage depending on the time of year. And of course, once again, Butterfree Shiny is more reminiscent of the pale coloring that we see in its real-life inspiration, the black-veined white butterfly. Because while regular Butterfree has pure white wings, the real-life butterfly seems to have some hints of color to it, depending on which one it is. The emphasis in green in its eyes may be the hint at the greater reference we see when it finally Gigantamaxes and has design inspirations from Mothra. Now, as with many of our first forms that we are going to find as we go through this, we just get a pale coloration of Weedle, which is more akin to its real-life larva counterpart. With Kakuna, we have a Pokemon that we know hangs from trees or attaches to them while they wait to evolve from a silken thread, and it is now green in color, which allows them to mimic leaves and hopefully stay alive a little bit longer until they eventually evolve. Though Beedrill is potentially thought to have its shiny coloration inspired by metallic green sweat bees, which ironically enough, they are not actually attracted to human sweat, unlike other sweat bees are. But their genus is Agapostamon, which honestly just makes me feel like I'm saying a Digimon name. And we can even see Postamon, Pokemon. Now I'm thinking of Pastamon, like a Linguini Pokemon. Why don't we have that yet? Either way, I digress. You can see the word and the potential seal of the deal on that connection there. While the Pidgey line closely resembles sparrows or other hawks in their shiny form, it is suggested that Pidgeot's shiny coloration resembles that of a golden eagle. We could make the inference that losing these vibrant colors would in fact make it more difficult to find a mate. As for Mega Pidgeot, we just get a darkening of the colors, which helps turn the blue tips that it has on its wings to purple tipped wings. Though this may actually be a reference to the Egyptian god of Ra, who it shares these same eye markings with. If that is the case, then we have the colors of gold and purple to represent royalty. Rattata's original shiny color was similar to that of an albino or lab rat, but has since changed to have a more golden color and then a more greenish color, allowing it to lean more into the idea of camouflage again. Its Alolan form becomes red, which may be a reference to the Blood Moon, since only Alolan Rattata can be found in Pokemon Moon and Ultra Moon. Same could be said for Alolan Raticate, but OG Raticate seems to have an orangish red coloration going on. The closest I can find to that is the Muskrat, which it is likely one of the potential inspirations of. And muskrats are also semi-aquatic rodents that have webbed feet, a semi-similar coloration, very loose I feel, and ultimately those feet allow them to swim better, which is similar to how our Raticate is known to be able to swim well, especially in its Alolan form. Spearow and Fearow can be just this massive mix of different things. We can talk about yellow sparrows, we can talk about carrion birds of all types for Fearow. They are just amalgamations of so many different birds. Fearow more specifically having inspiration likely being from the Goliath Heron, thanks to that massive head crest that it has, which is really cool. But even they seem to have a more normal coloration match to normal Fearow as opposed to shiny. I also realize I've talked about carrion birds so many times, millions of times probably, on this channel, but I don't think I've ever actually defined them properly once. Carrion is derived from the Latin word for meat, caro, and is defined as the decaying flesh of dead animals. Corvids, such as crows and ravens, are categorized here alongside other birds such as, what you would expect, the vulture, alongside many others. And allow me to show you what I believe is the coolest vulture of them all. Check out the bearded vulture, and let me share some baller facts about this bad boy. Bearded vultures do not hunt live prey. It is in fact the only vulture that is specialized in feeding primarily on bones of dead animals. More specifically, it takes up 85 to 90% of its diet. The bird is even capable of swallowing and digesting bones the size of a sheep's vertebra. Vulture Conservation Foundation, thank you for that bit of information. And then, they're also this red color on purpose. They're not actually born red. And according to Earth Touch New Network, for years, scientists questioned the origins of the vulture's red paint. Field studies, including an intensive 3-year radio tracking study, failed to uncover the origins of the red coloration. Researchers suggested that the red stains might have been caused by the birds randomly resting near iron deposits. Yet, the coloring seemed intentional, as captive birds that were given access to damp red soil quickly pounced on it, dusting their bellies and necks red like their wild kin. The birds would use the beaks and talons that they have to spread the red mud from their chest to their shoulders and their upper back. They're such a cool vulture. They're my favorites, but fun stuff. On to our next Pokemon. And actually, before we do move on, if you're enjoying this, please ensure that you do subscribe and share this with others. Tell people, hey, every single shiny is in fact handpicked and we can find the inspirations for them all. Share the video around. Leave a comment on what your favorite shiny is, or what your favorite shiny explanation is, or any other information that you may think may support or go against anything that I say today. I like to read all the comments. Even if I don't respond to them all, I do read them all. And if you really are enjoying this and you can go the extra mile, please do consider becoming a member of the channel to help support videos like this and so much more, which takes deep research that no one else has done. For as little as $3 a month, you get behind the scenes content, early videos, and a thank you with your name being announced at the credits of every single video. With that then, again, thank you so much for watching, and on with the video. Pikachu, Raichu, and Alolan Raichu literally just get darker and darker through their normal evolutions and their shinies. It's literally as though they are tanning, and that is really only half a joke. Just like our skin, as we said earlier, our hair has melanin in it that does absorb sunlight and darkens our hair's color. This is just simply what we're seeing with these Pokemon and their shiny forms. This is your very rare Acrylic without a lab coat insert from the future, because while I was editing, I realized that I completely missed Ekans and Arbok from my own script. Literally sitting right in front of me. I just completely glossed over them. So for Ekans, we have the perfect shiny to represent its inspiration, being the southern ring-necked snake, while Arbok shiny is just a king cobra, but with some blue instead of black markings. And because I was curious, let's take a tangent to learn how venomous king cobras are. Or rather, actually, aren't technically. Venom gets a little bit weird depending on how you want to describe it, and I'm not an expert on it. So, from National Geographic, we get the following. King cobra venom is not the most potent among venomous snakes, but the amount of neurotoxin they can deliver in a single bite, up to 2/10 in 1 fluid ounce, or per fluid ounce, is enough to kill 20 people, or even an elephant. Their venom affects the respiratory centers in the brain, causing respiratory arrest and cardiac failure. So that, I'm gonna pass completely, no thanks. And mind you, Arbok is even stronger than that based on its Pokedex information. So I'm gonna send you back to past Acrylic and let him continue on with lab coat and all. Thank you. Sandshrew and Sandslash have their inspirations from pangolins in parts, which according to San Diego Zoo, Animals and Plants, they can be dark brown to dark olive brown, pale olive, or yellowish brown in color. Explaining Sandshrews shiny. I'm flipping on my words here. But what does that say about our red-quilled Sandslash friend? Because Sandslash has a lot more than just Sandshrew's inspirations, and possibly bring in ideas from animals such as the short-beaked echidna, who seems to have a reddish-brown color and similar enough quills to it. This is also, fun fact, the echidna that Knuckles is based on, which may tie the whole shebang together. As for their Alolan forms, their fur becomes darker blue, and Alolan Sandslash's spikesicles, as I'm going to call them, change to a lighter color. This could help them absorb more sunlight. Alternatively, I believe it would be related to blue snow. And to explain this, I have info from the Geophysical Institute of Alaska. It is a common misconception that the blue color exhibited by glaciers, old sea ice, or even holes poked into a snowbank is due to the same phenomenon that makes the sky blue: light scattering. But nature has more than one recipe for producing the blue color. In frozen water and in the sky, the processes are almost the reverse of each other. A blue sky results when light bounces off molecules and small dust particles in our atmosphere. Because blue light scatters more than red does, the sky looks blue, except in the direction of the sun, particularly when the sun is near the horizon and the blue light is scattered out of the sunlight, leaving the color red for sunrises and sunsets. When light passes through ice, however, the red light is absorbed, while the blue light is transmitted. Were the operating processes scattering as in the atmosphere, then the transmitted light would be red, not blue. However, because of the large size of snow grains and ice crystals, all wavelengths of visible light are scattered equally. Scattering, therefore, does not play an appreciable role in determining the color of the transmitted light. It takes an appreciable thickness of pure ice to absorb enough red light so that only the blue is transmitted. You can see the effect in snow at fairly shallow depths because the light is bounced around repeatedly between ice grains, kind of like ping pong, losing a little bit more red with every single bounce. You can even see a gradation of color within a hole poked in a clean, deep snow. Go do the experiment yourself if you recently get snow, which, I mean, yeah, I guess if you're in certain countries, maybe you have snow right now or south of the equator. I don't watch weather patterns of anybody else. Either way, near the opening, the transmitted light will start yellowish, but as the depth increases, the core will pass through yellowish green, greenish blue, and finally this vivid blue, something we will find in our sand slash, or rather their Alolan parts. If the hole is deep enough, the color and light disappear completely when all the light is absorbed, which again allows for that deeper color. Otherwise, you just get to complete darkness. The Nidoran lines are super easy, as they just take the colors from each other in their shiny forms, except for Nidoqueen, just being the outlier, the boss that she is, I guess. Now, all of the colors of the world, of all of them, I cannot even begin to understand why Nidoqueen would be deliberately chosen to be green. The only thing that I could say is by relating it back to nature as the idea of she is a caretaker of her children, and she even has less spikes or is able to retract them or has less poison, whatever. I can't quite remember at this exact moment, which allows her to ensure that she will likely be able to cover her children and keep them safe, hiding them under her as a form of camouflage with her green body. Actually, that would make a lot of sense because I know they're partially kangaroo-ish, but they're also kind of monstrous kaiju rabbits and all these different things kind of mixed together, really. And it'd make it really hard to protect your babies, to carry them, to cover them, and camouflage with them if you are spiky, poisony, and you're gonna hurt them. Clefairy and Clefable get green ears and paler skin, and with them being confirmed to be alien Pokemon, we can simply state this is just another reference to exactly what matches the colors often associated with alien life: gray and green. Green, as not what I would expect at least, ends up becoming a color that we're going to associate with fairy types a lot, because fairy types are often associated or were originally designed to be an alien species. Vulpix in its shiny form mimics the colors of regular Ninetales. Meanwhile, Ninetales has some inspiration from the Kitsune, who are said to have many tails, extremely long lifespans, and supernatural powers such as the ability to breathe fire. A white Kitsune in particular is the Byakuya, and after so long of not visiting our friends at yokai.com, we can finally quote from them regarding this inspiration once more. Byakuya, otherwise known as the Shirogitsune, are kitsune with pure white fur. They can have anywhere from 1 to 9 tails depending on their age. Their behavior is as follows. Byakuya are the most common of the tribes of Zenko, or good kitsune. They are associated with Shinto and devote their lives to the service of the deity Inari. Their interactions include Byakuya are revered by humans as messengers or even incarnations of the gods. Statues of Byakuya are frequently found as decorations inside of Inari shrine grounds. Images of them are often sold by shrines as charms. Though over the years, shiny Ninetales has changed and actually became more black instead of this silverish white color. And we even get a different origin for this. Once again, from yokai.com, Kokuko are rare kitsune who show themselves only during the reign of a peaceful leader. They have thick black fur and are slightly larger than other kitsune. They have from 1 to 9 tails depending on their age, live in northern climates like Siberia and Hokkaido. They seldom appear in Japan south of the Tohoku region. And with their behavior, they are one of the 5 families of Zenko. They have pure, good hearts and stand in contrast to Yako. In Omyodo, I'm gonna hope I said that right, Kokuko are associated with the cult of the North Star. They are said to be incarnations of the Big Dipper. They also serve Inari, although they are far less common than Byakuya. So we see that there's a relationship going on between them, which is really cool considering the change of the shiny over these years. And while I won't recount the entire story of Kokuko, it is known to have a shrine in Hokkaido. And while Sinnoh is said to be inspired by Hokkaido, it is in the 4th generation that we get the blue color, which would allow it to represent the flag of Hokkaido through its normal and shiny forms, at least partially, as the flag is a red 7-pointed star with white fringes and a deep blue color. Then we have the shiny colors for its Alolan forms, which in some versions it isn't as clear, but we can see that they obtain a much deeper purple color and banding to it, which may just be a reference to seeing the aurora lights in their purple color, which may occur when there is high solar activity. Which, I guess you could say, I mean, Hawaii does get more sun. It's kind of like one of the big points of, you know, their tropicalness of it all. So that might be the reference, considering Alolan Ninetales is, well, Alolan Hawaiian. But that one's a bit of a stretch. We get more references to aliens, with seeing Jigglypuff and Wigglytuff gaining a purplish pale color in addition to green eyes, thanks to them being fairy types, again, associated with aliens. For Zubat and Crobat, this is going to be a small stretch, but I have something cool to tell you. We know they're strictly drinking blood for their diets. And so with their change to the color green, instead of it just being, oh, change purple to green, it may be the result of breaking down said blood that gives them this color, unlike how real-life vampire bats work. Thanks to Science Direct, biliverdin is a degradation product of hemoglobin and other heme products, or proteins, formed when the heme residue of hemoglobin is enzymatically decomposed by heme oxygenase. What does that mean? What was all that mumbo jumbo? It basically means that however they are breaking down the blood that they drink through their enzymes, just like how our body uses enzymes to break down food, theirs is completing it in a way that allows this biliverdin to be produced as a byproduct or a waste product, and it gives them this green color for their shiny. Or, if you don't want to be super sciencey about it, they just blend in with tree leaves as they fly through the sky in the night. It's even better. Moving on. Oddish, Gloom, and Vileplume just follow the idea of plants being properly green for photosynthesis while also becoming duller in color. Plus, there are some orange rafflesias for Vileplume, not just red ones. Paris and Parasect have a similar situation going on, but with their Tochikaso mushrooms representing caterpillar fungus, which, yes, Tochikaso, I found out recently, is something that you can call caterpillar fungus, which we can see that this form of cordyceps has the same yellowish color that Parasect gets in its shiny. My personal theory as to why Venonat is the color that it is may be a small stretch, but it changed from red eyes to blue eyes, and their eyes being seen as something similar to radar, thanks to their compound eyes, could relate to the color of radar in general. Red being a color for strong returns, blue being a color for weak returns. In other words, red is something that appears more commonly, and blue for less commonly. It comes back, not as strong or not as often. Interpret that as you will. What helps support this further is the eyes are directly considered to be radar units, and Venonat has even been seen using them as radars when trying to find Team Rocket's truck, seeing them as a green entity. Alternatively, it could relate to Venonat's blue color, which is actually from its original artwork from Ken Sugimori, as it was blue in its original design in Pokemon Red and Blue before shiny Pokemon were actually introduced. Actually, I don't even think it was blue in those games. It was just flat out blue in the concept art, which I gotta say, when I found that out, I was pretty excited about that. It's pretty dope to see these old designs given new life. With Diglett, it gets a blue nose, and with Dugtrio, it might be a darker or paler furred body with the same blue nose, all while Alolan Dugtrio definitely gets sunburned. We could just chalk up any of these instances up to sun exposure since they live underground. Even the blue nose might be something we could chalk up to lack of exposure, as some creatures gain a bluish or whitish color if living without light, similar to what we actually see with the residents of Ultra Megalopolis. Meowth has a lot of going on between all of its different forms. Regular Meowth and Persian, just adding new colors to mimic the pink coloration that we find in the ears or toe beans of real-life cats. Alolan Meowth in Persian, get a deeper blue color and purple tail or purple feet, which is likely a deepening of the pun regarding one of their inspirations being the British Shorthair, otherwise known as the British Blue. And then, with the Galarian Meowth, we have a Steel-type Pokemon that is known to be a bit of a ruffian and incredibly tough. But while the coin can't be polished up, the rest of its fur can, giving it this yellowish gold color similar to the coins we see on other Meowth. This connection deepens as part of its body has been said to turn to iron as per the Pokedex, so we may find that it's similar to gold rather than iron or steel in its shiny form. And this is something that we're going to find as a common occurrence when it comes to your rock, ground, or steel types. They turn from whatever color they are to a deep brown to represent rocks, or a, well, goldish color. Psyduck turns blue to blend in with the water better. Golduck becomes darker and gets reddish webbing and beak, which makes me a little uncomfortable for a reason I can't explain. Despite there being plenty of ducks with red or orange beaks in real life, it just feels unnatural on it. I can at least definitively state that Psyduck's blue color is not because of its potential relations to the platypus, as while they glow a similar blue-green color, typically also described as like maybe a teal, under ultraviolet light, that wasn't discovered until 2020 at the Northland College and Field Museum in Chicago, Illinois, within the United States. So yeah, that's not one of the reasons, because I know someone will think that, and now we all learned something today. Mankey and Primeape gain a green coloring instead of having their usual brownish, meaning that they'll blend in with tree leaves rather than the tree bark, I assume. Otherwise, there are no other ties that I can reasonably find. Growlithe and Arcanine are based on the Komainu, noble, holy animals usually employed as guardians of sacred sites. They can range in size from a small dog to the size of a lion, and, due to their resemblance to both creatures, are often called lion dogs in English. They have thick, curly manes and tails, powerful muscular bodies, and sharp teeth and claws. Some Komainu have large horns like a unicorn on their heads, however, many are hornless. Now, this does explain the original and Hisuian designs without their shiny, and in fact, all of their shinies changed from a reddish color to a sort of yellow for their fur, maybe even golden color for their Hisuian form. There are both bronze and golden statues of the Komainu, as opposed to just the stone ones, and they technically have a different name structure. So we very well could say, though, that the shiny form represents these other statues, theoretically speaking. Poliwag and Poliwhirl become more pale in color, while Poliwrath becomes green, following similar reasoning to Bulbasaur's shiny change. Abra and Kadabra are just shy of being white for their fur, which would follow that idea of not quite being albino, but getting close, just having that fade overall. And Alakazam is also close, but then it puts some color back into its fur while getting that pink coloration for its quote-unquote armor, or where the brown coloration would be, that we talked about for being typical of true albinism. But again, not quite there because it's not the pure white. The Machop line as a whole gets some green coloration, which is a little bit strange, though they all do seem to have some reptilian shapes, or rather traits, as we can see from their facial structure and their head crests. So this may explain that green color, as we often associate the color green with reptiles. Maybe it's based on something loosely, like a gecko. I don't know, like a crested gecko. While Bellsprout and Weepinbell can be chalked up to variant colors of any other normal pitcher plant, Victreebel's blue lips may be because a pitcher plant's rim will glow under UV light, which is pretty freaking dope. It's this super vibrant blue. I just wish the rest of Weepinbell's body color was just that complete black to finish that look, to really put it together. Tentacool and Tentacruel, while being based on jellyfish, may have two reasons for the primary change of color from red to green. One can simply be that they resemble several varieties of the bug-eyed monster and other alien invaders from the 1950s B-movies, which is reflected in its ability to fire lasers from the gems on its head. I put a smile on my face because I said B-movies and I thought of, you like jazz? It's burned into me. Can you tell I grew up in the early 2000s? I'm really showing my age these days. Either way, this brings about our green alien coloration but they are also 99% water, 1% poison sac, and of course, some people associate, or many people associate rather, poison with the color green. Otherwise, nothing too crazy here. For the entire Geodude line and their Alolan variants, we just get that richer brown color that we'd find deeper in soil if you dig through the layers. Alternatively, since it is a rock, we could theoretically think of it as being more ferrous. Ferrous rocks does primarily refer to metals, not just like soil or dirt, actually, which is going to be, or rather ferrous rock, is going to be truly darker rather than deep brown, as ferrous rocks are composed more of materials such as iron, hence the Fe, iron, part of ferrous. For Ponyta, we find a blue flame, which may be indicative of a hotter flame, meaning that the fire must be burning between 2600 Fahrenheit and 3000 Fahrenheit. Alternatively, we might be able to assume that it may be due to a chemical that it might be releasing. I kind of doubt it though, because then that would mean that it's releasing copper chloride into the air, which would produce a blue flame, but would be really bad. So let's just assume that it's releasing hotter flames in its shiny form. Rapidash is a bit tricky as it has a dark purple fiery mane. We do have ties to other fiery horses in mythology such as Skinfaxi and Hrimfaxi, but I can't find anything definitive there that I fully believe in. At best, we could assume that it could represent said horses of Norse mythology, as they are representative of the day and night. And the manes of our horses change from that bright orange, representing the sunrise, to the shiny form's dark mane, representative of the sky after a sunset. Again, if you have any additional insight on any of these shiny forms, let me know in the comments. Covering so many different Pokemon designs means that there's bound to be something that slips through the cracks. As for Ponyta and Rapidash's Galarian forms, their purple coloration changes to white, likely to represent the cotton candy-like designs that their manes have. If not this, then it could represent the purity of unicorns, considering they have the ability Pastel Veil, protecting the Pokemon and its ally from being poisoned. While regular Slowpoke will turn paler in color, the Galarian form's entire body turns into that mustard yellow that its forehead has, and then the forehead actually darkens. We could chalk this up to being Galarica seeds affecting the body further and changing more than just that forehead. Slowbro could be two different things from what I'm surmising. This Pokemon in general has been thought to be either part hippo thanks to its appearance, or a salamander in capacity thanks to its typing and regenerative abilities. In the case of it being a hippo, it's just purple is a color that is often used for hippos in children's media. Meanwhile, with salamanders, it could reference the spring salamander, which normally has the same pink color that Slowbro has. But that salamander is also called the purple salamander. Why is it purple? I'm not sure. During my time in college, I was told that if something is called purple, it's just something that is rarer and not actually purple. I have beef with some scientists out there because of this. Nothing with the birds though. You know what? You have funny names for birds like titmouse. I'll take it. And the blue-footed booby. I realize both of those are mammary-related birds. You know what? Take it as you will. If you've been watching me for a while, you know how I am. I don't need to explain myself. Meanwhile, for the shelter on its arm, it's this orangish bronze color, which we'll talk about later, as this actually matches a normal shelter. And because I think salamanders are cool, let me tell you that they are a keystone species. They're often the most numerous predator, eating the mosquitoes, insects, and other pests, including shrews. They also serve as food for larger predatory species. They build burrows, aerating the soil for plants, and those burrows serve as home to other species. Salamander populations reflect ecosystems' health and serve as an early warning system when they decline due to pollutants like PCBs and heavy metals. Because they react so early to those changes, researchers are aware of problems before they filter up to larger species of both plants and animals. Thank you, treehugger.com, and while they aren't a 100% reputable source for information, this information can be found in a number of other resources for our smooth and slimy friends that supports these statements. Magnemite and Magneton both turn gold for their body, while the tips of their magnets lose the red and blue polar ends for black colors instead. This could be a reference to magnetite, which is a naturally occurring mineral that is magnetic, hence the name Magnetite, which is funny because that could also be a Pokemon, Magnemite, Magnetite, yeah. It's actually one of the possible reasons for sand being black. Other reasons for black sand could just simply be volcanic material being broken down and washed up on a beach. Could also just be general organic material if I remember correctly too, but that one I'm not as strong with. Birds are as simple as they usually are, as Farfetch'd and its Galarian form just become lighter in color. The Doduo and Dodrio Pokemon turn green because they can live in open plains, savannas, or grasslands, blending in better, as the green feathers would allow them to blend in with those green grasslands rather than the tans and browns of their usual dried grass in the savannas. Seal and Dugong turn from a bluish white color into what I see as a pure white color. This relates back to the types of camouflage again, as the bluish white will blend better within enclosed icy areas. For example, if they were between the ice and the water, maybe between like ice structures in general in the water. Alternatively, the pure white color would allow it to blend in better with the snow on top of a landscape. Grimer and Muck turn this sickly green, and while we can attest to this being because they do indeed make you sick, we can also throw in the idea that they represent sludge. And while I've seen sludge and I usually associate it with a rich black color, it is also something that when treated can be used as fertilizer. What does treated mean? And is this another perfect opportunity for a small tangent? Absolutely, because there are a number of methods that include incinerating, hydrothermal carbonization, microbial fermentation, and many other methods that are used to then treat sludge. Essentially, the whole purpose is to get all the nasty chemicals out or extract all those good nutrients so that way it can be used as fertilizer, which, green. Alolan, Grimer, and Muck have their green portions changed to a similar shade of purple to the OG versions. And while that sounds basic, it could just be, I don't know, part of their genes expressing their older DNA. Assuming they have DNA. Pokemon are weird because they can breed, but Grimer and Muck don't actually breed like regular Pokemon. They just kind of fall apart and make more of themselves. Should I make a video about Pokemon breeding? Oh, God. I might need to. Anyway, move on. Shelter is creamsicle orange, and it does deepen to more of a bronze on Slowbro, but why is it even this color to begin with? Camouflage. Again, it kind of just blends in with the sand a little bit better after all, but then Cloyster turns into this deep blue color, a color I could only find on one form of clam known as the Maxima clam. And while I don't think this is the reason behind our very beautiful blue coloration here, I think that it's a fun way to talk about it. Also, I took the bullet and searched up blue clam for you. I was safe, but I realized what I searched up after it was too late, and I thought I'd end up with a blue waffle situation. Luckily, I didn't. I think that also just showed my age. Either way, blue coloration of clam may be inspiration for blue coloration of Cloyster. Ghastly gains a purple body with blue gas, while Haunter gains a blue tongue and deeper purple body similar to a normal Gengar. Also in the original sprites, I'm going to tell you right now, Haunter was cooler because they used to have their hands actually an outline to them in red, and with their shiny, not only would the tongue change to that blue color, but the outline would also change to that color as well. But nope, not anymore. They don't have that at all. Now, these Pokemon live in graveyards, and considering the smell that they have resembles the smell of a decaying body, I suspect their colors are supposed to mimic that same loss of color that we associate with a person who has passed away in a cartoon, blue tongue and all. Now, Gengar, poor Gengar, my boy. Look at how they massacred my boy. Ignore the fact that I have another Gengar, or don't. It's from Japan. A friend brought it to me, and it makes me very happy. But they ruined its shiny because it's more pale, which again follows that same logic, but you don't get any of the other fun added to it. But luckily they saved it with their Mega and Gigantamax forms, making them that pure white that you would expect to see in a bedsheet ghost or just old cartoon ghost. And to be fair, they kind of look a little bedsheety with the way that they kind of rise out of the ground. One day I'll get a Mega and Gigantamax statue of them. One day. Onyx goes gold, likely just due to it being polished over the many years, or alluding to the fact that it absorbs rocks and minerals throughout the entire time that it is tunneling. Doesn't say anything about eating them, just absorbs them into its body. And theoretically speaking, if it is just absorbing whatever it is theoretically possible to have a crystal obsidian onyx or a topaz onyx, whatever you want, as long as you place it in the correct location with the correct minerals or rocks. Drowsy and Hypno turn a shade of pink not to mimic the humans in this creepy way, but rather because Dream Mist is something that they consume and is often portrayed as that same shade of pink. Think about Munna and Masharna for a great example of this. And in fact, they are related to each other. Krabby turns gold, but is originally a poopy brown color. Now, don't at me by calling it poopy brown. I'm usually flowery with my words, but my brain said I needed to call it poopy brown, and I listened to the impulse for once with my writing. Nevertheless, Krabby is based on the sand bubbler crab, which has that same brownish color, almost to a T, but can have a more golden color depending on which one you may be looking at. And since you may have never heard of this crab like I haven't, well, I heard of it once, sand bubbler crabs hunt for microscopic life, called myofauna, living in the damp sand. They work at breakneck speed, passing sand grains into their mouth, filtering out all the myofauna, and kicking aside their waste, rolled into little, cleaned sand grain balls. There's a lot of good food in that there sand, son, so don't be surprised if you see some critters out there looking like they eat it, when in fact, they're just filtering out the tinier critters that are in the sand. As for Kingler, it draws one of its inspirations from the Tasmanian giant crab, otherwise known as Pseudocarcinus gigas, a crab that does in fact have one massive arm and one quote-unquote normal arm, and is one of the largest crabs that we are currently aware of, though this doesn't really explain its green color, even if we look at its other inspirations, such as the Japanese spider crab and the king crab. But what I can say is that there have been discoveries of crabs camouflaging themselves from predators and prey alike by using seaweed and anemones, which may give us the reasoning for our green color here when we have Kingler's normal and Gigantamax shiny forms. Voltorb and Electro turn blue while their Hisuian forms turn black. The reasoning for this is most likely due to their relation to Pokeballs and Apricot Balls, giving us a Pokeball, a Great Ball, and a Heavy or Ultra Ball, depending on how you want to look at it. Execute looks a little bit more like a coconut now with an orangey tan, while Executor seems to lose so much of its coloration, now even having reddish fronds, paler faces, and a more tan body as opposed to its deeper brown barky color. I'm willing to bet that this is a reference to the fungus Fusarium oxysporum FSP canariensis, which in other words is just what we know to cause Fusarium wilt. It destroys the vascular tissue of the palm and results in decreased water uptake, which will result in wilting and death as the tree loses color, even gets the same brownish red fronds that we see in Executor. This reasoning can also be applied to its Alolan form. Cubone, Marowak, Hitmonlee, and Hitmonchan all turn a similar shade of green. At least with Marowak, the skull seems to turn whiter, which may be a reference to bleaching of the skull due to the sun beaming down on it. And while I wanted to avoid saying it, Cubone and Marowak are likely green because, you know, they're ties to death, but Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan are likely green because they are green in the martial art. In other words, if you are new to something and don't have a lot of experience, you would be considered green. Its blue gloves are likely a reference to the red corner and blue corner of a ring. Don't let Google AI tell you because Ebihara, its inspiration, had blue gloves, because there is zero evidence of that whatsoever, and I have a very personal beef with Google AI. Though I've had a personal beef with it because it just likes to grab things from all over the place without actually properly sourcing it when I didn't ask it for it anyways. Lickitung is another salamander, and if we look at a true salamander such as the Eastern Newt, we will not only find a really similar body shape, long fatty tail and all, but also a similar color. to our shiny Lickitung. This is pretty cool to me since that's the color of the aquatic adult, while the terrestrial F, basically a teenager, is reddish, which might explain our terrestrial Lickitung in its normal form being pink, and the aquatic larva is this greenish black color. It is born of the water and returns to it in its life. Thank you, Illinois EDU, for the information regarding this. Coughing turns into this cyan or pale green color, but by looking at its inspirations alongside wheezing, we find our reasoning. They may be based on the imagined fear that heavy pollution caused by the leakage and or improper disposal of toxic and or radioactive waste may result in the creation of new and undesirable life forms. The symbol under its face resembles the skull and crossbones, a hazard symbol for poison. More poison colors, except we have, poison colors due to, again, different types of toxic sources. I bumbled that a little bit. Rhyhorn and Rhydon have a brown and gold color change to them in that respective order. It's the same reasoning we get with every other Rocky friend, so I'm not going to spend time on it. Chansey looks legitimately very, very sick, and I don't mean in the cool way. Chansey seems like a radium girl dying from radiation. Sickly pale color and green where that red once was. You can't tell me this is not to represent Chansey finally getting sick from constantly working on everybody and working in a hospital for far too long. I say far too long, but that's just part of the job. You can, you take the risk of getting sick to help others. Thank you for those of you out there. I'm gonna say that right now. Tangela is another green plant, but that's just because it's meant to be a seaweed-like Pokemon, making it an easy change to understand. Kangaskhan becomes paler. Again, nothing that's really special here, as that is the most basic form of pigment loss and not much to dive into. Though, the baby turns pink from the original bluish color, likely because of the typical colors associated with boys and girls in the past traditionally being blue and pink. Horsea becomes teal and reddish, while Seadra deepens the blue color and really strengthens its red coloration for the belly scales and the poison tips of its fins. I could really only find one seahorse that could be blue amongst other colors. I mean, we're not even just talking about mimicry, because mimicry brings about a whole new game. Because the Kinisna seahorse, which varies between colors of pale green to brown with darker speckles and even purplish black, which, with that spectrum, there would be some that would seem blue. Though I don't think this is related to Horsea, at least I can't really find strong enough reasoning in my opinion. What we likely have is just a form of camouflage for this Pokemon, while the red is vibrant as a tactic to tell other creatures to stay away from it thanks to their venom. Think like how brightly colored snakes work. Goldeen and Seaking become a brighter orange, which isn't much to talk about since this could just be something we naturally see in a species as a minor variation once again. Staryu and Starmie are actually a little wild. I've never seen their shinies before, and it caught me off guard, as Staryu is pure white for its limbs and blue for its core, allowing it to better mimic the stars in the sky. Very fitting for a creature from space. Meanwhile, with Starmie, it gets blue limbs, a bronze ring, and a deep purple core. This is likely meant to represent space itself and would help it camouflage better in the coldness of space and within our waters. But I want to at least talk about or show you the Lynkia levigata, the blue Lynkia sea star, a species of sea star that is blue and is found in the waters of tropical Indo-Pacific. And the kicker, they are nicknamed after the comet star, as though they were from space themselves. Mr. Mime gets green instead of red accents, paler skin, and deeper blue colored horns. I'll be real, there's not a lot strong here. Mr. Mime is a jester, a mime, a pantomime, and more mixed into one. I mean, it and Galarian form could just be differently colored mimes in the end, with nothing too deep to talk about here. Scyther has a pink instead of the tan carapace, and to be fair, when as a praying mantis molts, depending on their species, they may, whether they molt or not actually, be green, brown, or tan. This explains our normal Scyther, and if you consider the green portions as armor, then you can see the tan parts as sensitive or vulnerable skin, explaining why it would go from tan to pink. Jinx becomes paler overall, so I'm just gonna say that our Viking opera singer aged also because her hair whitens with her shiny. Electabuzz is based on a number of things, but the most important of them for why it is orange for its shiny is because one of its inspirations is a connection to tigers thanks to their stripes. Nice and easy. Boober, or as anyone else would wrongly call it, Magmar, turns a faded red and pure pink color, which we can thank to rubidium being added to flames. Lithium also yields a flame test color somewhere between red and purple, and it is possible to get a vivid hot pink, although more muted tones are possible. It's less red than strontium for that matter, so we get a number of different possibilities to why it might be this color. Alternatively though, potassium can also turn flames pink, and here's the big key here, we find potassium oxide within volcanic environments, which is where we find Magmar, hence the pink color for its shiny. Pinsir being a stag beetle, and there are some that can kind of be a bluish color to some capacity, but more than anything, the color seems to be more of a deepened and duller blue or purple that we would find in Heracross. The horns, while more gold, could also represent the yellow we find in Heracross's eyes. This is usually because they are seen as parallels to each other. Tauros gets this sickly yellow color fit with the green mane. This could just be for camouflage in some capacity within savannas, but I'm not satisfied with that. There is no real definitive thing that I can attach it to, but I can share some possible links. One being Glash Gaibnen, which is a mythological green bull, or alternatively, there is the saying of a green cow for when a cow is relatively thin, and Tauros, for its weight class, is kind of light in regards to normal cows or bulls. Their Paldean forms are nothing special, they just kind of swap their own colors around. Where it's black is now gray, and where it's gray it's now black. Magikarp is a carp, but is often associated with goldfish, meaning that its shiny is just a visual pun on goldfish. Gyarados and its Mega form turn red in relation to the Quinobody Carp Streamer, which is found beneath a windsock. And according to the Museum of Fine Arts Boston, traditionally a set of Quinobody are hung from a pole. The black Quinobody, the largest fish windsock, represents the father and is followed by a slightly smaller red or pink Quinobody that represents the mother. So there we go. All Gyarados are mothers and aren't even the largest one that we've seen. One day, there will be a larger black-colored Gyarados, and we will all run for the mountains that it will destroy. And it'll look really cool, too. Can you imagine it in the black color? I'm gonna change it to black just for you. I won't see it until I'm editing. Lapras is something we won't find anything super definitive with. We don't know the real color of its inspiration, the Plesiosaurus, but we often depict it as blue for Lapras's regular colors as well. Meanwhile, with its shiny, it does turn a purple color, which I believe may be a reference to how old copies were made for pictures. The copying process, if I remember correctly, would result in 2 copies being made through inking. One of them being purple, and another being black because of the ink. And there's a whole other bunch of different ways that could have gone. I believe there's even like green ones out there. And with the number of sightings these creatures had in the past and the pictures that were made of them, we can find some of these purple images. Ditto is often compared to an amoeba, a single-celled organism, differentiating cell, and when you stain these specimens, I am used to seeing them in a purple color. But through the use of a chemical called methylene blue, which is one of the commonly used staining chemicals, at least that I'm familiar with, you result in a blue color, giving us our shiny blue Ditto. This is unrelated to Mew, despite the rumors, at least when it was originally created. It was confirmed directly that Mew and Ditto were not related to each other in their conception. Eevee is partially inspired by a fox, and with its normal and shiny coloration, we get to see how it would be a red and arctic fox in color. And allow me to share with you the modern day domestication of foxes, because according to aces.illinois.edu, wow, I said Illinois, oops. For the most part, the animals we've domesticated have been docile for so long that there's no easy way to go back and study the transition from wild to tame. A notable exception is the domestication of red foxes, raised in captivity for their fur, starting in 1896 on Canada's Prince Edward Island, though it is also believed that Dmitry Belyaev, a Russian geneticist, was the first to domesticate the red fox in the 1950s. where basically they just kept breeding foxes that had friendly traits with each other, getting rid of the ones that weren't as friendly with us, and then continuing to do that until they had a domesticated fox, a super friendly towards humans fox based on their traits. Vaporeon is another water Pokemon that turns from blue to purple, but with its relation to mermaids, we could have thin thread links to their colors, typically being associated with greens, blues, and purples, to being why shiny Vaporeon is purple. Jolteon's shiny is an electric green color. That's it. That's the pun. Electric green is a color. Congratulations, we all got played. Flareon becomes duller in color, which may indicate the temperature that it is. The problem, though, is that while its body temp is said to be 1650 Fahrenheit, which is represented in fire to be a duller cherry color in comparison to a full flame, it would better match, in its shiny color, a 1300 degree Fahrenheit color flame. Either way, we have a duller color representing a flame that is not as hot as its normal form, though this is not to say anything about shiny Flareon having weaker fire. It's just more speculation, as all this really is in the end. Porygon has some visual inspiration from the drinking bird toy, and when we look at old patents, or even consider the actual toy itself to be fair, we know that it fills with water in the head, and it drains to the bottom to continually bob for water. And with water being blue, we get a dark blue Porygon. More Pokemon transitioning from blue to purple with their shinies with Ammonites and Omastar, though their shells are now gold, or at least a deepening of those tan colors. I honestly have nothing there. Maybe it's just to match the pattern of blue to purple that's been established so far. Though, I won't leave you empty-handed and will at least tell you about the most sought-after kind of Ammonites, being the iridescent Ammonite fossil. That shell, thanks to a unique set of chemicals, allow them to become this iridescent array of varying colors, and they are very pretty to look at and priceless. I have just a regular old fossil right back there. Yep, just on display, real tiny back there. I've used it in other videos, so go watch my other videos if you want to see it. Kabuto and Kabutops get their coloration due to horseshoe crabs being their inspiration and having a shade or hue of green for their shell in some instances. In addition, their blood is not just blue, but can be shade of blue-green. Aerodactyl is really hard to pin down as it gets a pink color and blue membrane for its wings, while the Mega form gets a purple membrane. The best I can think of is how the mistake is made of associating pterosaurs, which is what Aerodactyl is based on, with bats, in which newborn bats may have a similar shade of pink. But to repeat, bats are completely unrelated to pterosaurs, so I don't have a definitive answer. And it could just go back to albinism. In all reality, fossil Pokemon in general are going to be the hardest to pin down, as we don't actually know many of the true colors of dinosaurs, to my knowledge at least. Snorlax becomes darker in color, Articuno fades to a color more typical of ice, Zapdos just becomes a shade darker, and then Moltres. Poor Moltres is a plucked chicken, and I don't care what other reasoning there may be on this one, Moltres is a plucked Peking duck in my eyes now. Dratini and Dragonair were originally purple, but changed to have a pink color with a golden orb on their neck. We do have two possible reasons for this. One being that they are partially based on sea serpents, in which old descriptions of them match with descriptions of whale penises. I'm using the actual scientific technical term. YouTube, please do not shank me. Explaining, though, their pink coloration, and no, I'm not going to show a whale donger on my channel. You do as you do. Be responsible with your life. Alternatively, though, they are likely also based on Ryu, which is just directly translated to dragon, but is supposed to be a dragon of luck, which would explain the golden orb. This would lead us into the Jade Dragon that is Dragonite, which could be a reference to the Jade Dragon, a relic of China's past. And as per National Museum of China, the Jade Dragon is carved from dark green Zuyang jade. The body is smooth and clean. On its head are long snout and thin eyes. The mane is floating, and the body curls like a hook. Vivid in shape and exquisitely carved, and has a reputation of China's #1 dragon. And while the descriptions don't match well with our Dragon Knight, we can see that it may match in some capacity with our Dratini and Dragonair, while following up with the full, deliberately chosen Jade color. Mewtwo has no crazy flair, it's just, typical alien colors. And then there's Mew. Mew has this wonderful shade of blue, likely because the color blue can be associated with wonder, or more specifically, the mythical world. And with Mew being the ancestor of all Pokemon, a highly sought after Pokemon by many, yet elusive all the same, it would make sense that it would be so closely attached to the color blue for its shiny. As we move into Generation 2, Chikorita's line being based on Asian pairs becomes a bit more clear once we look at their shiny forms, and more specifically, Bayleaf definitely draws upon the light tan or brown that the pairs are. The only difference is the leaves seem to be wilting for our Megas, and then Meganium has an orange hibiscus rather than a red or pink one. Cyndaquil's line has its fur changed from blue to brown, with it being related to echidnas, volcanoes, and its Japanese name being shared with the mythological fire mouse, Hinizumi. We have a couple of possibilities. It could just be brown because of mouse fur, or it could be seemingly covered in a layer of soot. Dealer's choice, really. Hisuian Typhlosion's fur is lighter in color, which isn't much to say about it. I mean, there's some flames there. Great. Totodile's line is teal with blue spikes instead of red, which honestly, the only conclusion I could come to is that it overall camouflages better within water than its shiny form. Sentret is likely based on the Tanuki in some capacity, which are either raccoon dogs or the yokai. For the real-life animal, they are in fact dogs and not raccoons, and their fur colors can align with the colors we see in shiny Sentret. Though, because the Tanuki were brought up, I cannot resist talking about them in their yokai form and how ridiculous they are. So, from yokai.com, Tanuki possess powerful magical abilities. They are similar to Kitsune in their superb ability to change shape. Tanuki have a jovial nature and delight in playing tricks on humans. Aside from their powerful ability to change their shape, perhaps the most famous attribute that the Tanuki possess is their massive, malleable, magical testicles, which they can adapt to any need. Their testicles can be used as weapons, drums, fans to keep cool, fishing nets, even umbrellas. Often Tanuki incorporate their testicles into their disguises, the Tanuki becoming a shopkeeper, some nook, eat your heart out, and its testicles transforming into the shop itself, or perhaps a palanquin, complete with servants to cart the Tanuki from place to place. Beautiful mythological stuff, isn't it? Anywho, fur is pink and white, which is something we would associate with classic albinism, even though it isn't true albinism again. Hoot Hoot and Noctowl have some inspiration drawn from grandfather clocks, which allows their shinies to bear their golden color. Ladybug and Lady Yin's orange coloration may be inspired by Asian lady beetles, which have that same orange color as opposed to the red color we would typically associate with other ladybugs. Now, Asian lady beetles are within the US and they are found to be an invasive species. I've had to deal with them, and by deal with them, be around them before when I worked at a state forest in the past, and their stench makes other creatures not want to eat them. These lady beetles. I watched one approach a spider 4, 5, 6 times its size and go directly under the spider, as instead of the spider raising its arms, warning it, whatever else, striking, nothing happens. Instead, the spider backs away. The ladybug, or the lady beetle, proceeds to go under the spider and past it without a single problem whatsoever. Spinarak is tricky. Its shiny colors now being blue and pink only relates to one type of jumping spider that I could find, which would specifically be the blue-faced peacock spider, which, yes, those are one of the best spiders in the world, in my opinion, thanks to the dances that they do for their mates. I guess alternatively, one of its other inspirations, the Joro spider, can be more blue in its body, but not like Spinarak, so it's a bit of a toss-up. Meanwhile, with the Ridos, it just fades in color more than anything. Crobat is not green like the rest of its line, but does gain green color for the membrane of its wings with a pink body. This could go back to what I said about Aerodactyl and young bats being pink, or true albinism in some capacity. Otherwise, you could just consider it a very faded purple. I don't, but you can. Pichu follows the rest of the Pikachu line, becoming a little bit darker. Cleffa gets the same green horns because alien. Igglybuff doesn't get the green eyes, but becomes a darker color, and then there's Togepi. It also darkens in color, while its triangles swap their blue and red colors with each other, which is the same for Togetic, and there's nothing special to say here, extra melanin. With Natu and Xatu's origins in the Quetzal and Kakapo, we can find that the common coloration is primarily from the Quetzal, while the Kakapo has browner feathers that you could translate as orange, I do suppose. Otherwise, again, it's just fading colors and changing hues a little bit over. I'm gonna make the bold assumption that the Mareep line is pink because of cotton candy, and then the rest of the line has razor burn from being sheared, though Ampharos' mega form gets white wool and blue orbs instead of red. The orbs are overall nothing too special and are just another color for the orbs that you would find with Eastern-style dragons. Though, there was a realization on stream while doing the research for all of this, and that was the fact that a male Ampharos has 7 balls. It is Shenron. Blossom is a bit odd because it does turn pink in color alongside the flowers on its head. Those flowers, while being related to hibiscus thanks to their Hawaiian inspirations, we suspect, have been said by others to also relate to Rafflesia kythie and Plumeria, the last of which having the same pink color in its actual flowers and its stem, which would explain the pink coloring of Blossom's body. Marill could be green because it's got the alien fairy type going on for it, or it could be because of it being in water and blending in with seaweed or even grass, considering it is a water mouse. Although it could also be moss. And Azumarill seems to partially represent bunnies or even Easter eggs, at least to me. So we're going to attribute this bright yellow or gold color, however you see it, that completely messes with its counter shading as something that is meant to represent Easter eggs. Sudowoodo, with its mimicking trees to blend in undetected, is changing to have its colors try to more closely resemble trees in autumn in its shiny form, thus the red orbs, though the green of its bark might give it away a little bit. Politoed, just like we explained with every other toad, does turn blue instead of being green, just like in real life instances. Hoppip goes full green, which is typical of our plant Pokemon, but Skiploon and Jumpluff turn pink, which is when I found out that there were real life pink dandelions. They even still have a little yellow center, which would explain why Skiploom's flower continues to stay yellow itself. Pink Monkey Apalm is another non-albino, technically albino Pokemon. Sunkern got a little roasted since it is a sunflowery seed. Sunflora also got sun-bleached, and Yanma is no different than any other vibrantly colored dragonfly, except now it's blue instead of red. And I know I've said it in other videos before, but a small reminder, a little bit grim reminder if you would, that all dragonflies have their color entirely given to them by their metabolism. So when it dies, it'll just lose all that color. It'll all fade away. Wooper and Quagsire are more salamanders, hence the pink color for their shiny. Haldane Wooper has its shiny colors as a mix between its regular form and original Wooper's colors. Espeon goes full alien mode thanks to its green shiny, large eyes, and probe-like tail ends. And Umbreon has a blue shiny because of its relation to the night and the moon, linking it to the idea of a blue moon, being a rare instance of a second full moon in a singular calendar month. No, it is not actually blue, but it is a pun and a very rare moon event, very rare coloring, hence being the shiny. Murkrow's design, through its tail and its hat, are often associated with a witch's broom and witch's hat, and with their typically associated colors being purple, that's why we have our purple Murkrow. Slowking follow the same reasoning for the rest of the line that we've mentioned, and its Galarian form just retains the blue color that the other Slowking gets for its cape. Mischievous is green thanks to green being the color of fear, especially as Mischievous is directly stated to be a Pokemon that scares people and feeds off of the emotional energy of fear. You are what you eat, I suppose. And as I was streaming my research for this, one of my audience members, Just Jay, had very quickly commented when I got to Unknown that it is blue in its shiny because it is a hyperlink text. And that was such a big brain move that I will consider nothing else for the reasoning behind this one, and I cannot take credit for it personally. Wobbuffet is likely pink only because of the female version having lipstick, which is another reference to traditional male and female colors. Giraffe tongues are blue, which could explain the blue shiny colors that we get in Shiny Giraffe Rig. Pineco and Fortress have a similar orange or bronze color, and while Pineco is easy to attach to the idea of mature fallen pine cones, Fortress kind of just ran out of ink, and while it may have gone from iron to bronze, as many of our steel types do, it is also partially inspired by the Mexican jumping bean, which bears a similar bronzish brown color. Dunsparce is strange as there aren't really any instances of pink or even blue Tsuchinokos, which is what it's based on or inspired by, though I will say that shiny Dunsparce being pink, and Dunsparce for that matter, feels similar to the Danger Tsuchinoko card from Yu-Gi-Oh! Are they related? Unlikely, but fun to imagine rather than just assuming it's the typical boring blue-pink swap. Most things turning pink could also relate back to albinism, same thing over and over. I'm a broken record at this point. While Gligar isn't exactly the right color, the blue shiny it has is likely a reference to regular scorpions in real life glowing a vibrant blue color under a black light, which is really cool once again. And this is due to a substance in their exoskeleton called the hyaline layer, which fluoresces under ultraviolet light. The exact reason for this glow is still unclear, but it may help scorpions avoid sunlight, find each other, or confuse prey. Steelix turns gold as you would expect. Snubbull itself is likely a reference to small dogs that are often dressed up by their owners, hence the flowy skin that they have that looks like a dress, then giving it just another dress for its shiny. And with Granbull, it's just closer in color to what you'd expect for a real-life dog. Quillfish hits the blue and pink opposite colors again. Hisuian form turns gray and purple, which is more than likely a reference to the poison that it has, considering it is a pufferfish during the end of the Edo period, in which people did not know how to surf fugu and would have likely perished from it. It was also illegal back then. Signs include difficulty breathing and numbness around the lips, which would turn you purple or gray for that. And alternatively, another audience member, Lost Wisteria, posited that they could be undersea mines, which is a very strong possibility since naval mines were plenty established by this point in time. Especially so if we consider that they were more common in Europe. And at the end of the Edo period is when Japan started having far more trade for their industrial revolution with the assistance of Europe. This is why we see the smokestack Galarian wheezing in Hisui. That is the largest sign of that period in time, and I just realized I did not cover Galarian wheezing shiny. Time to do this on the fly. Oh, it just goes from black to bronze. That, again, either that's going to be related to the smoke, or it's going to be related to the fact that it's the steel work, the actual pipes themselves in which all this smoke comes out of, is either going to be that black, which is going to be made from like an iron, something that's not going to react to all the chemicals coming out of it, and then changing, whether that be through oxidization or just through the material itself being used. That was easier than I expected. Caesar just matches Scyther, and honestly, it would likely prefer to be green, considering Scyther itself hates the color red. Shuckle is such a headache of a mix of possible different molds or creatures that this is, I don't have anything definitive, because only its shell changes in color from red to blue. My best that I could come up with, while not the strongest link, would have been to relate the berries that it eats and their real-life counterparts, because Shuckles used to have a purple shiny and now it has a blue shiny. It used to have a 25% chance of having any berry, then a 100% chance of an orange berry, and then that would change to 100% chance of always carrying berry juice. I had originally thought that orange berries were based on blueberries, and as such, I would have said that its current color is based on the skin of the berry, while when you mash a blueberry, it becomes purple, hence the past shiny coloration. But no, orange berries are based on oranges, and I found that thanks to everybody. And then Knit, another audience member, stated that even the old purple color was likely in place to make up for the strange ways that colors were displayed on the old Game Boy devices, and I guarantee she is correct on that. Meaning, purple should theoretically show up as blue. So you know what? Go with your heart's content, I say. Shuckle is weird. Nothing against Shuckle themselves. I'm just frustrated with not being able to find a strong reasoning under this one. Heracross and Sneasel pink because opposite blue. Teddiursa and Ursa Ring are either green because of gummy bears, or they could just blend in with foliage better than the bark of the trees, which is what their normal brown furred coloration would do. Slugma states that it has to continually move, otherwise it will harden into a rock. And while its shiny silver color is not the rock color that it hardens into with its evolution Magcargo, it could be another form of that process. Or it could relate to any other form of metal that is being melted down, considering that lava or magma is just superheated metals that are melted. Magcargo was originally blue but turned purple. Either way, it could be a reference to blue lava, which is caused by sulfuric gases burning the oxygen-rich air, which is a really cool real-life thing. Or alternatively, if it was supposed to be truly purple, then that could be the proper body temperature that Magcargo is, as I stated in the intro. Swinub looks like it really just froze to death, while Piloswine got its hair bleached, so it could be blonde, which could just be from the sheer amount of light it might be getting in Arctic environments when there aren't snowstorms. Alternatively, it could just represent a pile of straw or hay. Corsola is blue coral, which does exist in real life, and according to Florida Museum UFL.edu, blue coral live only in the Indo-Pacific in the tropics of the Indian and Pacific Oceans, and they are unusual in that they are blue in color. They have a blue exoskeleton. All other corals just about have white skeletons, and also in that they aren't changed in their form for over 60 to 70 million years. They were the same animals way back in the age of the dinosaurs as they are today, and that is dope. Remaraid's purple color and it being partially inspired by the triggerfish means that it is simply a purple triggerfish, which is actually called the red-toothed triggerfish and will range between the colors of deep purple to bluish green, matching the normal form of Remaraid as well. And in regards to triggerfish, they have 8 strong teeth, 4 on top and 4 on bottom, and while their jaws are small, they are certainly powerful. An important fact to know about them is that they're infamous for their feisty nature, and they've been known to charge any intruders, be it another fish or a diver. Then Octillery gets a sepia tone color to its body because it is supposed to represent a tank. When we think about it, Remaraid is a revolver originally, and that was the first mass-produced multi-shot firearm back in 1835 with the Colt revolver, making it fairly old. So pair that quote-unquote oldness, bad word to use, with our tank, and we get that old sepia color inspiration that we would see in old photographs. Delibird can be explained by looking at the fact that Santa was not always a man that wore red clothing. That was just Coca-Cola who kicked that whole appearance off once they saw it by popularizing it. According to PBS, he used to be seen wearing blue suits, purple suits, yellow suits, and sometimes he was even skinny, meaning that there wasn't any strong color associated originally with Santa, thus we have purple Delibird. Mantine just follows another form of counter shading while becoming bluer in color, theoretically allowing it to live in a different depth to other Mantines safely, though this might also cause trouble in regards to it finding the food that it typically prefers. Skarmory was tarnished and or oxidized. Houndour and Houndoom turned blue, which can once again relate to rarity. To follow, we have the final evolution of the horsey line being Kingdra, and they're just purple in color, which is a color that seahorses can be. For example, we have the pygmy seahorse. Bargabants, pygmy seahorses, take the color of whichever species of Gorgonian corals they live on. Unlike other seahorses, male pygmy seahorses use a pouch in their trunk and not their tail to brood their young, and it just looks like it vomits up its young then. That's kind of cool. The Bargabant's pygmy seahorse was discovered accidentally in 1969 on a Gorgonian coral being examined and was the first pygmy seahorse species to be discovered. Thank you, Oceana.org. Phanpy faded in color while Donphan moved from the Stone Age to the Bronze Age once again. Very similar to most of our other rock, ground, or steel type friends. Porygon 2 follows the same reasoning as the regular Porygon, and Stantler just blends in better with foliage as opposed to trees with its now green color. Though it still has those spots on it because, again, real deer will have spots in order to mimic the light that filters between the trees to help them blend in better. While Smeargle went tan all over, it does have a different colored tail end, which, honestly, speaking of the newly colored tail, it isn't a real shiny coloration. Smeargle marks the boundaries of its territory using a body fluid that leaks out of the tip of its tail. Over 5,000 different marks left by this Pokemon have been found, so it could have any color on the end of its tail, whether it's shiny or not. And we see that in other Pokemon games, such as in Stadium 2, where it can also be seen with teal, orange, or indigo paint on its back and tail. In addition, originally, the colors for the regular and shiny were flip-flopped in comparison to what we know today. Tyrogue and Hitmontop are similar in color to each other, as Tyrogue takes on the blue from Hitmontop, and Hitmontop gains the purple color, likely just a representation of their steps in rank, if not just a deepening of the color, or rather a change of the hue. I apologize. Smoochum skips skin care routines too often and desaturates. Elekid desaturates from not enough electricity, and so does Magmy, but because of lack of heat. I'm joking here, of course, this is all just minor pigment loss. To follow, we have Blue Cow Miltank, which is just the opposite of pink, though there are at least the Belgian blue cattle in real life. Raikou, Entei, and Suicune are all fun because they appear in the Zoroark and Master of Illusions movie. They appear as protectors of Crown City, appearing when they believed that Zoroark was terrorizing the town. When they came to Crown City, they attacked Zoroark and chased it down in the process. When they cornered it, the Pokemon living in Crown City all surrounded them, and the legendary beast stopped attacking Zoroark after learning that it had no malevolent intentions. Later, when Green's Kodai, on the verge of his defeat, tried to reach the Time Ripple a final time, Raikou, Entei, and Suicune cornered Kodai, causing him to flee to the stadium where he was knocked unconscious by Zoroark. The three then roared their farewells to Zoroark when it and Zora left to return to Unova. Because of its appearance with Celebi, I always imagined that they were from an alternate timeline, but found out there's no actual real confirmation of that, oddly enough. It wouldn't make sense that they're from an alternate timeline, but again, nothing definitive. So Raikou and Entei, having darkened masks, may represent the clouds and soot from storms and volcanoes, while the lighter color for Suicune and the blue cape may closer resemble the purity of water. Larvitar, being a larva, looks a bit more like a bug with its deeper green. Pupitar blends in better with the dark thanks to its purple color, and Tyranitar would absolutely blend in better with the sandstorms that it would whip up, as it is now a light brown color. Shiny Lugia is boy, that is girl color instead now, even though actually Lugia in the movies is assumedly a lady, as it is shown to have a child. Ho-Oh is representative of not only the Phoenix, but more specifically the Feng Huang, the immortal Phoenix of China from which it derives its name. Ho-Oh is now a more golden color with its shiny, and this relates closer to the Emperor's exclusive colors. Imperial Yellow, particularly the shade known as Ming Huang, was reserved exclusively for the Emperor's use. This color appeared on the Emperor's robes, palace architecture, and ceremonial objects, making it a visual manifestation of Imperial authority. And that's what we see in our shiny Ho-Oh. And finally, after all of this, we have the Onion Fairy that is shiny Celebi. Nice and easy, it is a red onion now. It also appeared in the Secret of the Jungle anime movie, and it had not, in the history of that, appeared for a long time, and when it finally did appear in lore, it was in its shiny form and was said to herald a new age of peace. Thus, this concludes the first two generations of shinies and their variants. If you want to see more of this, share this around, get the views up, get that watch time up, and leave a comment. Comments and watch time are the #1 way to help a channel grow freely, though if you would like to assist the channel further, then consider becoming a member on YouTube or Patreon for as little as $3 a month, as that makes a massive difference. If we can hit 1,000 members, then the channel can be purely stable and I don't have to worry about ad revenue, and I can actually even look at hiring editors or getting thumbnail artists for all of this, as I do all the work myself currently. Essentially, the more that you guys give and the more the channel grows, the more I want to give back to you, as you deserve it for allowing me to do this. But before we go, why don't we go ahead and give thanks to all of our members of the channel by shouting them all out in the credits. Thank you to all of our members of the channel. Biggest Fatty, Nick, Buzz, and Summer, and Heels for Life. All of our champions, Andrew Martinez, Joshua Wilson, and then all of our Knights of the Court, Double, Shiny Jam, Sarah, Bruce Boys, Boss Romance, Fatty, Rumble, My Night Stickers, Dog Next to Me, Oh My God, 214, Wow, Andy Stone, Alan, Heels for Life, Blue Dolly, Born Hempel, Max and Reeve, Sporting Game for the Darkest, still right behind me, Glitch, Queen 83, Wade Marley, Gilpin, Alex, Pokemon Fans, He-Day, No Offense, Michael Stein, Jay Gill, Don't Knock Over the Green Street, please, Grayson, Rome, Big Mama Couch, Buzz, and Cliff, Mako, James, Blake, Ocean Mill, the Internet Person to Look Into, Orlando, Jake, Calderon, Dan, The Links, Tonkinator, Nori, Breck, Richardson, Ethan Salzman, Nick Jugger, PMEG, Mohammed, Sunset Star, Dominic Ziak, Fruit Punch, Bob, Hacho, Barreco, Commander, Flyboy, JC, Brian Perez, Donkey Dog, Ada, Erica, Napoleon, Bonaparte, oh my goodness, Julian, Tyler, Violet, Jack, Delta, Spartan, Andrea, Berlin, Leslie, like to hear Tumble, Stones, Get Freddy, 1, 2, 3, 4, Gannon, Rob, I moved the list, Brandon, Cockfield, Hulster, Bud, Dawson Reed, Hotshot Game, Giant, Dinger, Hackon H, Eve Seller, Pop Reed Gaming, Tastarza, Angel Morris, Hashima Kaba, Smitty Weberman, Jangerman, Jensen, my goodness, Sam Wasabi, Handbook, Dirks, Nathaniel Matthews, Jaco, the Demonic Neko, Dunsane, Jonas, 00, Lemon, Dragavian, Solodochi, Dad Boy Frito, Zukier, Seth Coleman, I'm falling apart today, Rick Sale, Timid Warlock, Sishiki, Tom, Luigi the God, Funky Ratty, Kit, Katuos, Alolan Figment, a Delightful Nerd, Morgoth, the Stardies, Dragon, Pulp, Lifting Things, Fab Tax, Arxis, Off Balance, Kaden 42, PB Only Time, Gabriel, Timeline, the Copper Smith, Ink Mina, Mori, Bog B, Schmidt, Jacob Dice, Lost Mysteria, Ponyboy 44, Maisie, Wabba Wham, Chris Elion, Joe Aaron, Pika Miku, Not Playing 18, Snows, The Leaves, Jerry Rivera, Amir, Miniko TH7. I'm getting so distracted by my dogs who are all over me right now. This is ridiculous. Stop, you're messing with it. Your tail, my friend. Your tail. Why'd you come up here? Sydney, House, Abdallah, Lottie, Dr. Jack, I have that anachronism. Turbo Fish, Zema, Thibs, 2341, Fart, Bob D. Fish, Eric Pelayo Moreno, Brian C. Anthony Wells, Bradley McDonald, Sammy, James Wilson, King Cobra, Bulba Chris, Spoiled Cheese, Cool Breeze, Dylan Bear, Corrigan, Nick Garcia, C. Brett Miller, Riz Smith, Spooky Spirit, Riz, Softy Kai, Michael Hayes, Gory Malcolm, Suki Satsuki, 2232, The Black Dragon, Phantom Nations, Allison Warren, Assesso, Mythiers, Mavs God, Gem, Ghost, Mix, Embryo of the End, Adam the Pokemon Weave, Clearly Milk, Widows, Kieran, Marco, Neil, the same invert fossils, Marcos, Hal, Yagal, Cal, 12, Nix, You, Lumac, Dragon King, Just Dragon, Kagyo, Tatsuki, Professor Bond, Night Owl 707, Miss Zora, Dakota Couch, Brad Sunheimer, Cameron Guzdeg, Carl Jean, Hunter, Owl, Hisema Kassam, Rebecca Connell, Hune, Jappy W, Memento Mortem, Korn, Avery Koshi, Koreshi, Katie, Divine, Troy Phoenix, Fairy Fantasia, Jake Young, Daisy Hero, Him on Friday, Daniel Eats, April Roston, Planet Blob, Marshy, Edward Kosowski, Fenica Fox, Evil Chan, Pander, Nerdus Freeberg, Hag, Addy Cadabra, Destron Gaming, King Vine, Jack of the Frost, Righteous, Ivy, Ruby, Addy C, Jacob Square, DJ Monk 23, Squid, Water, Rice Smith, Gamer, Bad Dragon, Just JM, Star S, MD, Horse with a Cocktail. Whoa, hold on, watch what you say there. Hey, Bale, Yeet, Micah, 626, Amy Muse, Arwoods, Lumio, Gwendolyn, Eastgander 072, Andrew Frost, Speaking on Miss Summers, Long Knock, New and Ian Ray, Big and C Night, whatever this is, Corner on the Cob, Unseelie King, Devorian Skies, Daniel Tracy, Garrett Hoffman, Rosef, Dylan Peters, Malachi Burkhardt, Carlisle, and Heather Weisman. Thank you all for being members. That was a mess. I'm definitely having to expend the hard gold outro music there. But thank you so much for watching. Don't think I want to do. Please be nice to each other. I love you. See you next time. Bye.